Hello and welcome to the Traveling Space Panel. I'm your host, Sarah the Pivoter, founder of Pivot Point International, and with me today is Chief of Staff from CisLunar Industries, Ubaldo Ciminieri. We created this panel a few months ago to attend the Ascend conference in Las Vegas, and we decided that there was a little bit of a gap between science and art, entertainment and industry, and we wanted to close that gap. So we have brought together a group of people that are from entertainment in Hollywood, as well as aerospace engineers and people who have created their own fashion companies within the space industry. We are here to talk to you about all the amazing and incredible avenues you have to get into space today, because it's not like it used to be. Yubi, I'd love to hear from you, your journey into space.
Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah, my partner in good, as we like to say. This has been a really exciting opportunity for us, specifically because for me, I never thought I had a chance to work in the space industry. I wasn't an engineer, right? I didn't have clearance and all those things. I had a bunch of literal rocket scientist friends, but never did I ever think it would be possible for me to be part of this community. Not because they were doing anything to push me away from that. It's just sort of was my own bias, right? My background is in technology. It's in sales and marketing. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a co-founder of a SaaS tech company. And one day I just had an opportunity to really start to get to know the space community locally in Colorado, in Denver, where I was at the time. And it, it just became really clear that this is where I was meant to be. And from that point, things just started to happen. People I started to meet and opportunities that started to make their way that would utilize my skills, right? I was talent strategy, HR, communications, like those are my skills. And space needs those things, just like it needs all kinds of skills, right? And so I finally figured that out. And this was also at a time when the commercial space industry is really blooming. There's a lot happening, which means even more so that this conversation needs to happen so that we can encourage more and more people from all different backgrounds to become a part of this with us, and because the space, if we're going to go to space as a human race, not to rhyme there, but we need everybody's voice. We need diverse voices. We need to be inclusive of everybody because everybody deserves that opportunity to speak up about it. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, amazing. It's really incredible to see how the universe conspires in your favor when things are in alignment. And you could just see in the audience that they were excited to see this convergence and they were really hungry. We are multifaceted individuals. You might be a rocket scientist or an engineer, and you might also be a singer and a dancer, or you might paint. I actually had many conversations after that panel with people coming up saying, I feel like I can bring my full self to talk to you and the rest of this group. And that's incredible because that's where innovation happens. That's where creativity is sparked and inspired. And as Einstein said, creativity is just intelligence having fun. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have some fun. My journey into space, very similar to Yubi. It was one of those dreams. I thought, well, I didn't become a fighter pilot and, I didn't study engineering. So maybe I won't do that. I went the route of aviation instead. And then I went to a conference. I met Dr. Cyan Proctor. She was very inspiring. We connected at South by Southwest, met Loretta Whitesides, did Space Kind, and the rest is history. I was actually surprised just a few months ago to be referenced as a space influencer. I was like, oh, is that a thing?
Oh, wow. See?
But as a speaker and a podcast host, I have a voice and I help other people share their voices. And it's been really fun to just see this growth and to be on this journey with you. And I'm really excited to bring on our guest today, especially our first guest. She is so much fun. I was actually wearing one of her products at the Ascend conference. And she's going to be making us team uniforms for the Traveling Space Panel, which we're really stoked about. Her name is Sabrina Thompson, and she's founder of Girl in Space Club. Sabrina, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Evie.
You're so welcome.
Always.
Sabrina, tell us a bit about Girl in Space Club. What was how did you get there? I know, you had a very unusual journey in your coming into space. It's kind of the other way around than most people. So I'd love to hear from you, what sparked your interest, how you got here, and why you created a Girl in Space Club.
Yeah. So, I was the artsy kid, always was artsy, always into fashion as a kid. And I kind of stumbled upon a career path at NASA. So at NASA, I design orbits for NASA missions. So we call it flight dynamics. So lots of math, lots of science. But the artist, the kid in me never went away. And so although I had I still have the job, right? So I have a good job, right? Like it was like, well, what are you going to do with all this creativity? And so in October of 2022, I had this idea of making a flight suit, right? I would dress up in a flight suit and do a lot of outreach with youth. And then in 2022, I found a reason to kind of make it a bigger thing, right? So we know what happened with the all-female spacewalk a few years ago, and it kind of created a space for me to be able to push inclusion for more women in space by looking at, well, hey, yeah, like, is anybody checking out what we're wearing? Does anybody care? Right? Like, I mean, there's so many opportunities as far as like in just looking at the garments and just looking at the human factors and designing with humans in mind. And so I started Girl in Space Club really as a way to, create more inclusion in STEM and in the space arena, using the things that for me are innate, right? Art and fashion. So it was a way for me to really bring my full self to the space industry and be able to have a little bit more control of how I show up, and it also allows me to create that inclusion instead of waiting for a seat at the table, so to speak. Through Girl in Space Club, like I'm creating a table that we can sit at, right? And not wait for things to be designed and created for us, but kind of do that for ourselves as women in the space industry.
And look good doing it.
Hey,
yes, exactly.
Love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I love that,
you.
Sabrina, about creating the table, right? Not waiting for the opportunity to be there. And there's so many things that you might have a solution for. And so instead of waiting for someone else to make it happen, you can start those conversations. I remember you talking about how you started and you didn't think it would get to where it is today. And just in May, you were doing a fashion show at the Analog Astronaut Conference, and everybody loved it. It was so much fun. And now people are asking for that at their events as well.
Yep.
So it just is one spark, one idea, and you can create those opportunities.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to have you here. Next up is someone who some of you may know, Ensign Harry Kim. He was stranded in the Delta Quadrant on the USS Voyager. They finally made their way back. He's changed his name to Garrett Wang, and we're very excited to have him as part of the panel. Garrett, how are you?
It's wonderful to see all of you again, especially since it was not too long ago when we were at the Ascend panel. Yeah, but for me, I met Ubaldo at an event at another Star Trek actor's house. Basically, that's how this all began, I suppose. At least my involvement with it. Ubaldo and I had a nice conversation about the Ascend panel that we were going to pitch, or that he was going to pitch, and it worked. And I think it was a really, really wonderful time and a great chance to be able to meet all these wonderful individuals here. But for me, going into acting already it's kind of frowned upon, being a son of immigrant parents, to go into any fields that are arts based, so music, acting. not encouraged when it comes to Asian parents. And it took quite a while for them to kind of support my dream of becoming a performer, becoming an actor. But when they finally did, and that's really important. I think everyone needs support from their family members when they're choosing an endeavor or choosing a life path. And once they said that they were going to support me, that's when I took off and I booked Star Trek Voyager. And for, I would say, probably from 95 till 2000, I was the only Asian series regular on television, Asian male, that is. Eventually, I think maybe Lucy Liu came in on Ally McBeal, but that's a lot to be the only Asian person out there. And for me, I've been a sci-fi fan since day one. I saw Star Wars in the movie theater in 1970. Is it 77? Is that correct? Yeah. And it was, groundbreaking for me. That's my entree into sci-fi. And of course, getting onto Star Trek, it's almost like a dream come true for a sci-fi fan and an actor to work on a sci-fi show. And a show which really, some milestones happened on my show because we had a female captain, the first female captain. And let's face it, there's a lot of gender bias in this world that we live in, especially in this country that we live in. And to have someone in charge that is a woman is an amazing thing. But it's so interesting because Star Trek has influenced so much of the technology that we use today in real life. And it's weird because the space industry and Hollywood have kind of, they have their own trajectory there, and there's kind of like parallel trajectories, but they haven't really intersected that much, except for maybe Star Trek influencing technology that we know, the flip phone, the pads that we use now, the iPad. We've had PADDs, personal access display devices, in Star Trek forever. We've had that forever. Right now, I know that they've actually developed transparent aluminum, which is something that they had in Star Trek 4, the Voyage Home. Transparent aluminum, and that is now being used in bulletproof glass and things. It's just amazing that Star Trek has influenced so many different things. And for me, I do feel that Hollywood, Star Trek as we know it, and other sci-fi shows can be beneficial in terms of advancing the space industry itself, because right now I do find that a lot of the space industry, they're grappling with innovation of how to innovate and how to bring about either space vessels, spacecraft, whatnot, those type of technologies. And a lot of the limitations are there because people have a difficult time thinking outside the box. And I do feel that in Hollywood, that's the one thing that we do very well, is think outside the box. And so, it is my hope that Hollywood, as we know it, can, integrate with the space industry and further both Hollywood and the space industry at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's one of the core things to our mission, right? As a team, as the Traveling Space Panel, is to help bring more of those intentional collaborative conversations to the forefront, but making sure, to your point, that we're including all different kinds of voices. I think we're covering a wide swath here with this current group, but there's just such a big opportunity. And what's a cool driver is Star Trek. I think for most of us, Star Trek created a blueprint for us to follow to create our own future version of that. And I think that's, of all the sci-fi that's out there, I feel like Star Trek is maybe the most achievable. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like when you talk to fans, at all the conventions, the cons and things, do you hear a lot of that?
Well, I mean, if historically speaking, if you're talking about the two biggest franchise in science fiction, it's going to be Star Trek and it's going to be Star Wars. Some people might argue Doctor Who as well, the British sci-fi show, but I'm going to say Star Wars and Star Trek are the two biggest ones. And I feel that Star Trek is the most attainable because Star Trek really, a lot of, every show has had a science consultant there to make sure that anything that we throw out there, whether we're talking about warp drive or we're talking about, you name it, any Trek technology is based in real life physics and real life science, so it's not just this random thing like, okay, and then this is going to happen that someone just made up out of the blue. So Star Trek has the most basis in reality. And also the creation of Star Trek by Gene Roddenberry in 1966 was all about trying to show a television show. Each episode, yes, the main players go down to a planet, they have an away team, they meet these aliens, they do this, there's a plot, twist here and there, but there's always an underlying message that Gene Roddenberry tried to throw in there, an underlying message, a blueprint for humanity to live a better life, basically, because he deals with a lot of the issues that we deal with as human beings on this earth. So gender inequality, racism, you name it. There's a Star Trek episode, a corresponding episode that deals with those issues to help us get past that. So yeah, I do feel that Star Trek is the best of all sci-fi to watch. It's must-watch television. How's that?
Totally. I love it. Well, thank you, Garrett. We're excited that you're part of this conversation. We're excited to bring your experience to this wider audience. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Ashley Kowalski. Now, Ashley is a project leader of international partnerships at the Aerospace Corporation, and she is also an analog astronaut who's been on some really incredible missions. And she is also really helping move forward all of the things that we need to understand from a human experience perspective. So she has some really unique insights into some of the things we might not consider when we go into a new environment, and how we need to consider these ways of being as we approach living on a vessel for long periods of time or being in a new environment. So Ashley, we're really excited to have you with us.
I'm really excited about her special effects right now. Look at that.
Look at her arriving in from the planet.
Just coming on in.
So good.
She doesn't need a shuttle. She doesn't need
That's
any
right.
type of environmental suit. She just kind of comes right into the
She's
into
just
orbit.
like an Avenger, basically.
Oh, it was so like Superman, Christopher Reeves. Oh,
It
Yes.
was.
Oh yeah,
so good.
But thank you for the awesome introduction, Sarah. So I'll start a little bit, do a brief intro into my journey into the space industry as well, just to follow suit with everybody, and then kind of move on to some of the other things that you mentioned. So I was never one of those space kids that knew right from the get-go that I wanted to go to space camp. I wanted to be an astronaut. I knew I wanted to do this and this. I wasn't quite on that path. I knew that I liked math and science. I really excelled in academics. But, I had this side of me that still very much enjoyed the arts. And, I was, doing, after school every day, rehearsing for hours at a time at my dance studio, or doing musical theater productions, or performing with a Polish folk dance group. Because, similar to Garrett, my parents are also immigrants, right? And so there was this dichotomy always in my brain where, of course they always say, the choice is yours, you do what makes you happy. But, there is always like, that logical side of you that says, okay, well, maybe I should do this route, but I can still add to it with the arts on the side. So I ended up going into engineering just because, I loved the math and science. I didn't know which route I wanted to go, but I wanted to go to a university that still supplemented that with different musical theater opportunities, different dance opportunities, music opportunities. And so I was very active in the arts community while going into through my engineering degree. But, even once I got that engineering degree, it wasn't set in stone that it was, while I would like to go into the space industry, nothing is really set in stone. It's really how opportunities kind of stack up in your life and how, you can apply to something, but, maybe you don't get that opportunity. And so it's a lot of, it's not all something that you can plan. And so, I remember having internships throughout my time in like, fuel cell research or oil tools manufacturing, like things that were not really space industry oriented, right? It wasn't until I joined the Aerospace Corporation 10 years ago that I really started focusing wholeheartedly on the space industry, and focusing a lot on satellite systems and communications and things like that. Aside from that part of me, I do have a great interest in human spaceflight and furthering our understanding and what the needs are going to be for future long duration human exploration. And to that end, as Sarah mentioned, I've done several analog missions. One was at the Mars Desert Research Station. I did that through Aerospace Corporation. We did 2 weeks there to test out some equipment in those harsh Utah conditions. And the next that I did was called Sirius 21, and that was an 8-month analog in isolation and confinement held in Moscow, Russia. And it was a combined mission with NASA's Human Research Program, which is based out at Johnson Space Center, Moscow's Institute for Biomedical Problems, and then also the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, which is the United Arab Emirates Space Center. And, that mission really opened up my eyes to a lot of things that we need to take into account from a design perspective, from an architecture perspective, from a human psychology perspective, from an emotional and mental health of our astronauts perspective. And that's where I really like to tie in the arts into my engineering background, and to bring that to the human spaceflight community. There's a lot of things that, engineers and scientists and researchers, they just don't think about when they're doing these designs. For example, if you're going on a Mars mission, you are going to, potentially be there for, 2.5 to 3 years if you take into account getting there, doing research, and then, coming back to Earth. So you're in a small combined environment with the same people over and over doing similar things for a long period of time. And in order to maintain crew dynamics, in order to maintain the operational readiness and abilities of the astronauts, you really have to provide a relief for them, whether that's through a virtual reality simulation, or even recently on the Polaris Dawn mission, you saw Sarah Gillis, one of the astronauts, she performed a violin piece that was John Williams' piece that was done in coordination with musicians on Earth. And it's fantastic if you haven't seen it yet. And just things like this, or even, we'll call it the feng shui. I think we call that at the Ascend conference, the feng shui of like how these habitats are actually set up. You don't want to have, an area where you do hygiene stuff right next to where somebody is going to be eating food, things like this that just help with, or, even just how the layout of the interior of the habitat looks. So do you want it to be plain bland? Do you want it can we do something that's still functional, but adds to the aesthetic design of it to help our emotional and psychological health? So those are the things I really like to connect together. And, doing that 8-month mission in isolation and confinement really opened up my eyes to a lot of those things. And so, so I like to kind of show that there's really a crossover between the arts and engineering and human exploration, long duration human exploration. So thanks.
Amazing. Yes. And no, that was such an incredible thing to witness, and to just, probably a decade ago, and we wouldn't have even imagined that that would be something that's taking place. And yet at Ascend, someone from Intuitive Machines came up and started talking to me about, the process that they now have in place, talking about sending art on their missions. And now, how do we define art? And then which team takes care of that? And he said, I never thought, I've been in the industry 30 years, that this is a conversation to be having. And it's really, really cool. And I think the power of this is it tracks the humanness in all of us, right? We all are inspired by music, or a beautiful image, or a sculpture that has us think something different for the first time. And so by using that and combining, as Garrett said, with entertainment and Hollywood, we can really create worlds and inspire people to, be advocates for space. A lot of people don't realize how much we use day to day that has come from this research, or how much the methodology or process for working through something has come from something like an analog mission. So that's really powerful.
Not to segue us too much, but I did want to, because Ashley, you mentioned, the kind of creature comforts, right? Fashion, right? Like, again, I want to wear something comfortable, but yet that represents me. But you also, mentioned like entertainment for the astronauts. Have you, or Sabrina, Ashley, either of you, are you Trekkies by chance, or?
Come on.
Why?
Why you gotta put us on the spot like that, Yubi?
I don't know, Garrett, what are your thoughts on that?
I think Yubi's referring to our panel at Ascend when we found out that two of our panelists don't have much knowledge about Star Trek at all. But that just goes to show you that there's tons of fans of sci-fi and tons of fans of space, real life space industry that don't cross. There's no crossover or very little crossover. So like I said, there's parallel trajectories that are going on right here. So I'm not going to hold it against the ladies for not knowing their P's.
None of us are.
Cues about Star Trek. Right, it's okay. It's okay.
We might just have to have some like Star Trek-esque design on our uniform.
Yes.
Right.
We can do that.
There we go.
That's perfect.
We can collaborate on that right now, right? Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, and I think, what? I think that just means, we just have, that means there's a lot of opportunity for these conversations to, to converge those two paths you're talking about, Garrett. And that's why we're doing this. So just a little fun there. Sarah, okay, I think we've got time for one last question for everybody before we kind of close up.
Absolutely. So what we wanted to ask everyone is just really quickly, what is your hope for the future of space? So Garrett, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, my hope is that the future for space is very similar to what Gene Roddenberry laid out, which is a much more positive, hope, a hopeful future, basically, a positive. And it's because a lot of times when you watch sci-fi shows, they can be a little dark. There's some darkness there, and it's sort of a dystopian future, not a utopian future. And that's really not what we're trying for. I mean, we really, as the human race, we're looking for collaboration is what we're looking for, and not conflict, right? So and collaboration is something that Star Trek is all about, as opposed to, if you're a big Star Wars fan, you're watching stuff that's basically good versus evil. That's it. Very broad brushstrokes, whereas Star Trek is very detailed. Sort of, if you're using the analogy of a painting, it's much more detailed brushwork, right? So so my hope is that this future that we have in the real space aligns itself with what Gene Roddenberry has laid out, that more positive hope for the future, where we all get along, we explore the universe, and we make first contact, and we with another alien race, hopefully, and then we share what we know with those guys, and it's collaborative and not competitive. That's my hope.
I love that. I recently heard the quote, collaboration happens at the top, competition happens at the bottom.
There you go. Amen. That's so true.
Love that.
And the more that we expand ourselves as humans, the more we integrate the science and the arts, and the more we accept the whole self and know how to emotionally regulate and communicate and articulate ourselves, the more hope we have for that type of future. So thank you very much, Garrett, for that.
Of course. And of course, the one technology in Star Trek that we do not have yet that I really would like to see in the future are transporters. Yes. Everyone can use a transporter.
Yes.
No one would be late for work with a transporter. You're just immediately there. You roll out of bed and you transport to your office. You're good. So,
Or lunch in Italy.
Lunch in Italy. Exactly. I'll be, Ubi, do you want to have lunch in Italy? He's like, yes.
Here we go. Let's go.
Your Italian background. You can help me out. You can help me order. And we're just going to go have lunch and beam right back. That'd be beautiful.
Beam right back. Not late.
Not
that
late.
Would be perfect.
I love it. I love it. Sabrina, what about you?
I'm with Garrett. Like I want to see a more hopeful future, right? Where there's definitely more collaboration. I imagine it being more colorful, right? So I think when we think of space, we think of the colors that are in most of our backgrounds right now, right, in the screen, right? But adding some of those complementary colors, right? Like I imagine more art. I imagine more creativity. I imagine people bringing open minds, right? More curiosity and less, attitudes that are more of like, let's conquer, right? Like, or more like collaboration and creativity and bringing in the arts, right? Where it's like this conversation that we're having now, right, is going to be the norm, right? Like having more art, having more innovative solutions that involve both sides of the brain, like whole brain thinking is what I would call it. Yeah, and I see more inclusion, of course, right? On all, in any way that you can think of, right? Where it's like, it's for everybody. Like there's a place for everybody in space, right? That's kind of like Garrett said, this utopian society, right? Or future, right? In space. I think that would be awesome.
Yeah, and also Sabrina, when you talk about Star Trek, it is the most inclusive of all the sci-fis. They show practically every ethnic background has made an appearance on Star Trek one time or another, which really I call Star Trek's Starship Earth in a way, because we do have people from the African continent, from the European continent, from the Asian continent, right? From the Middle East. It's all there. And that's what it has to be. You need to show that spirit of collaboration and joining together of all ethnic backgrounds and all genders as well. Being on Voyager, being the first female captain, we had, in 1995, when we premiered, we had death threats because people were so angry about seeing a woman being in command. Like they said, we're going to come down to Paramount Studios and blow up your sound stages because that's what you deserve for allowing a woman to be in command, which is crazy for 1995 to have 1895 thinking in 1995, right? So, yeah. So our show there's been so many times I've been at conventions where I'm signing autographs where young ladies will come up and say, because of your show, because your captain was a woman, I'm now at a STEM job right now in a very high position. And I think I have it all. I owe it all to the fact that there was a Captain Catherine Janeway. Thank you. And so I'm able to glow and beam about and having these conversations with these fans who have gone on to great successes in their fields because of a television show. You know what I'm saying? So really, Hollywood is definitely it needs to be more intertwined with real life, with the space industry for sure.
Agreed. What about you, Ashley?
Yeah, while I agree with everything that Sabrina and Garrett said, I'll come to this question from a more just quick industry perspective. How about that? And so basically, my hope for the future here is that one, we have the ability and means and the support from all different entities to continue to do exploration. I think it's human nature to continue to want to explore, and we need to continue pushing the bounds of it. There shouldn't ever really be the question of, why are we doing this or why are we spending funds on this? It's I think a natural part of human nature to continuously want to explore. And I hope that, we continue to have the means to do that. And a part of that is doing a lot of public outreach and doing panels like this and doing STEM engagement and talking to industries that are not just space related industries, but industries that thought that didn't ever know that they could play a part in this. Because I think the more support we have and the more knowledge we have about the space industry, the more people get excited about it, the more we'll, go further and further into the universe. And I mean this even beyond human exploration. There's so much out there that we still need to see and to understand. And I really, it's really important for people to know that things that we do in space and things that we discover in space do continuously help our life here on Earth. And so for me, my hope is that, we do that public outreach, we get more people understanding, what does space actually mean? It's not all about human spaceflight EVAs, extravehicular activities. It's so much more than that. Our society wouldn't function without GPS satellites. We have medical research happening in space. Growth of crystal proteins that help with creating prescription medicine here on Earth. So I think, my hope for the future is that there is more understanding for that, and that we can continue to have the means to expand and into the space industry for the betterment of everybody.
And to what you're saying, Ashley, having the means, the funding, that will happen the more that we educate the general populace out there, the more they understand, what space exploration is, or what does it entail? What do we have to do as as Earthlings, as human beings? What do we need to do to get together and get behind this? And the more that we do panels like this and educate people, I do feel that the funding and the means will be there, because it'll become such the norm that people are like, oh yeah, of course, we definitely have to put this many billions of dollars into this project. It just has to happen. No one's going to say that's way too much, because if you're educated and you get on the same page as we are on that page right now, you're with it. You're going to be with it. You'll be fine. Well, I agree with this. This is not too much, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I love it. We could keep talking for years to come, which we are going to. That's the whole point of this panel. So thank you all for this incredible discussion. Thank you for bringing us into this conversation that you, the audience, are having, and giving us a few minutes of your time. We're very excited about the future of the space industry, and where humanity can really just grow and thrive out into the universe, as Star Trek kind of showed us what could be. So thank you all very much. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to next time. Take care.